When we moved to Los Angeles 10 years ago, we lived in a high-rise in Koreatown right across from the Wiltern. It was a magnificent new building. We'd never lived in a high-rise. We'd never even lived in an apartment together. But our apartment had this unobstructed view looking west. And every evening on each day of the year, we watched the sun set. We also began every morning on the balcony, whatever the weather was. At night, for many parts of the year, the moon, various planets, and a few stars would come to charm us into sleep. Other than the Griffith Observatory, it was the best view of the night sky in LA. And when I would awaken in the middle of the night, I loved communing with the moon that seemed so close from the 20th floor. As a child, I used to call it my moon, and to this day, I still think of it as mine. With the night sky as a backdrop, each year on the first Sunday in January, we come together and celebrate Epiphany. Epiphany is a day that seeks to remind us of the light of Christ coming into the world and the recognition that this was a light for all people, for all time. This day, the story is centered around the Magi, the wise ones, who followed a star in the night sky and came from the east to find the child, a child that was and is that light. While for most churches in the West, the Magi are simply part of the Christmas narrative and celebrated on Christmas Eve, along with the shepherds and the angels, Eastern Christianity takes this waiting very seriously. It is not until the 6th day of January that they observe Epiphany, and it is a day of great celebration. In their observance of this day, they savor special liturgy, songs, food, and gift-giving as they mark the arrival of the ones who came from afar. But in the West, our edition of the Magi on Christmas Eve is one of the ways that we've allowed perhaps this portion of the ancient story to lose some of its significance. In reality, their part of the larger story is incredibly significant. Biblical historians tell us the Magi were, of course, not Jewish. There were no kings of Israel in those days. Instead, Caesar was the ruler of the Roman Empire, and Herod was the king who had been put over the people of Israel. The Gospel of Matthew does tell us the Magi came from the east. Perhaps they came from Persia, which is modern-day Iran, or Babylon, which we know as Iraq, or perhaps they came from Arabia, which we now call Saudi Arabia. Many scholars insist the inclusion of the Magi in this story is the beginning of the understanding that the light of God was for everyone, not just for a few. Numerous artists have beautifully illustrated this point by having a long line of people of different cultures and races following the Magi to the manger. But in the continually whitewashed version of the Christmas story, we have seemingly forgotten that all of the characters of that story were Middle Eastern. They did not have lily white skin or blonde hair or blue eyes. They had beautiful darker skin and darker hair and darker eyes. And to be clear, just in case you're confused, none of them were Christian. So perhaps the light of God and its unveiling through this magnificent star in the night did foretell the love of God unfolding for all people, whatever path they traveled. Perhaps even at the beginning of this subversive story, tradition was being reimagined in order to tell a new story, Perhaps it was a story that was and is still being written, a story that has kept growing and evolving in and out of space and time within this world and within our universe. In this never-ending story, the one named Jesus would go on to shatter boundaries of race, class, and gender, as well as time. And because of the light his presence brought, the marginalized, those who were in need, those who were disenfranchised, those who were ill or considered unclean, those who were the enemy, were to be and would become the honored guests at the tables he shared. John Buchanan says the more he ponders the story of Jesus, the more convinced he is that this is a story about the radical inclusivity that came with the light Jesus brought forth. When we consider the light that lives within this story, remembering the message of the light being not just for some, but for everyone, we can begin to reimagine this light and discover that it is still a light that can change everything. That light changed the trajectory of the wise ones' lives, making the journey, following the light, seeing the child, offering the precious gifts. All of it was life-changing for them. Sometimes, though, we forget perhaps the most significant part of their journey, the dream. The dream that warned them of Herod's true intentions and made them change their course so that they came home a different way. Many of us who find this community have come here by a different way. We too have looked for a light that was shining in the night of our uncertainty and despair. And we found in this place a light that was not just for some, but for everyone. A light that is helping us begin a journey that is offering us a new way home. As we grow, one of the most amazing parts of this community is our realization that the path we are on together is one that is filled with the beautiful diversity of who we are as individuals and who we are as a community, which makes us a community that is hard to define sometimes. A minister that was visiting a couple years ago, and someone who is bluntly honest all the time, said to me, "Laura, this is truly an amazing community, but I just don't get it. What do you all have in common? What makes it work? I cannot see a strategy, a plan, a direction. It appears to me that you all just really like each other. And do you really think that is sustainable?" I did not know how to answer them at the time. But these days, I would say, it is the light that holds us together. It is the light that shows us the way forward. This is the light that shines in the night and in the day. This is the light that is around us, among us, and within us. Reading the news every day, I realize, as you do, our world is not in a very different place than the world of the wise ones who followed the star. There is despair, there is fear, there is anger in one of the deepest nights of our generations. And in the midst of all of that, we recognize in this place there is joy and hope and love and peace that radiate from the light that was in the beginning, the light that was with God and the light that was God. This day we celebrate Epiphany, and as we do, we are invited to enter into the wonder of the star and look for the light of God in our here and now. And as we are looking for that light, as we are looking together for that light that will guide us, I wonder where that light will lead us this year. The answer is, I do not know. And it does not frighten me. In large part because I always, at this time of the year, remember one of my favorite quotes of all time. It is from Rilke, who said, "And now we welcome the new year, full of things that have never been before." One of the young ministers I know from our United Church of Christ Senior Ministers group begins each New Year in her church with what she calls star words. So I'm riffing off of her idea a little. You know how I like to borrow things. This year, there are stars at coffee hour, stars all over the place. And there are words. If you read your insert this morning, if you're here in person today, there is an excerpt from an article in the Washington Post about words. This will also be in the meeting house this next week for those of you who are watching online. So rather than doing the traditional way of stars and star words, we're not asking you to choose one word for the entire year. We are offering a collection of words for you to consider because we are all about choice. I am hoping you will look at these words in their 3 categories and choose one word from each category. You may want to have a word for the beginning of the year, another for the middle of the year, and the last word for the time that will lead us to Christmas Eve. I have a feeling deep in my being that this year may well surprise us. It may teach us that when we live within the radical inclusivity that comes with the light, miracles are possible. Even though the road we travel may not be easy, miracles do abound, even in a world that is uncertain. These miracles will only become realities when each one of us decides this is the year to live into that light. This will take all of us looking for goodness. It will take all of us believing we can do more together than we can do alone. And so this morning, with this understanding in this sacred place, we give our thanks for those magnificent magi who saw a light and left the place they were to travel to a place that was giving birth to all that life and light and love have to offer. Those gifts are ours today. May it be so. Amen.